right now. So we are going to be talking about innocence and guilt for this entire chapter. We are reading from chapter 13, which could call it the guiltlessness chapter. It's about innocence, and we know that the Course teaches its concepts from the Holy Spirit by contrasting them with what the ego teaches. So we'll be looking at both innocence as well as guilt. So hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader for this session is Atisha.
If you did not feel guilty, you could not attack. For condemnation is the root of attack. It is the judgment of one mind by another as unworthy of love and deserving of punishment. But herein lies the split. For the mind that judges perceives itself as separate from the mind being judged, believing that by punishing another, it will escape punishment. All this is but the delusional attempt of the mind to deny itself and escape the penalty of denial. It is not an attempt to relinquish denial, but to hold on to it. For it is guilt that has obscured the Father to you, and it is guilt that has driven you insane.
Mm-hmm. So you might think of this ego vortex as consisting of a combination of errors, a tragedy of errors that includes guilt, includes condemnation, includes the belief in punishment through attack. All of this is part of the separate mind and is a part of the ego's delusional system. We're going to, in this chapter, be looking at how did all that get started? Where did all that come from? This tiny mad idea about seceding from the union of God. Well, it begins with a feeling of guilt and then cascades on from there. I've written a little summary of the cascading sequence here, not to become preoccupied with the order of things because they all start to swirl around in a vortex and reinforce the same delusional system again and again. But do know that there is a type of crazy logic that has brought all this about beginning, and guilt is the starting point. And so we will be exploring that uh, recently on a previous session. David coined the term a PhD in A Course in Miracles. And I would say it is essential to become free of the ego's grip thought system. It is essential that one understand both what guilt, how that works, and how it shows up in your own thoughts and feelings. And so that you can then be alerted to it and step back away from it, discontinue any attention or investment that your mind might give to feelings of guilt. And by the way, this is, I think, for me, the most effective definition, meaning for the idea of the ego is condemning. It condemns outward towards the world and others, but it also condemns inward towards oneself. And the definition given here, the meaning here, as viewing someone as unworthy of your love and deserving of punishment.
The acceptance of guilt into the mind of God's Son was the beginning of the separation, as the acceptance of the atonement is its end. The world you see is the delusional system of those made mad by guilt. Look carefully at this world, and you will realize that this is so. For this world is the symbol of punishment, and all the laws that seem to govern it are the laws of death. Children are born into it through pain and in pain. Their growth is attended by suffering, and they learn of sorrow and separation and death. Their minds seem to be trapped in their brain, and its powers to decline if their bodies are hurt. They seem to love, yet they desert and are deserted. They appear to lose what they love, perhaps the most insane belief of all. And their bodies wither and gasp and are laid in the ground and are no more. Not one of them but has thought that God is cruel. If this were the real world, God would be cruel.
Hmm. So the idea that I want to bring your attention to here is that guilt is the beginning of the separation. The acceptance by your mind of the atonement is the end of the separation. So it tells us any number of times in A Course in Miracles that we have to go back to where the problem began. Let me identify the problem so it can be solved. Well, the acceptance of guilt into the mind was the beginning of the separation, and therefore that's where the error began. That's where the error must be undone in this experience of guilt. Before we go any further, though, let me just make a side comment that we're talking about a type of guilt that you may not even be conscious of yourself. A conscious guilt would be about an event that occurred in your life in the past for which you have strong regrets, or maybe it was done to you and you have strong feelings about what was done. But you can remember the event. You know what happened, so to speak. But the guilt that we're talking about here goes deeper than that. And those guilt feelings that you remember are but things that are more on the superficial level of your subconscious mind. We're talking about a guilt that is more hidden from your awareness, one that was actually the cause of the beginning of the separation. It's the beginning of a delusional system that attempts to define what the world is, where your mind attempts to define what the world is separately and apart from the way the Holy Spirit would define it. And we're not saying that people are always in touch with these things. And again, they are hidden. And so we're talking about what I will refer to as existential guilt, guilt that was here before you were born into the world. And when we were growing up, we acquired this pattern of thinking, which is here said to be a delusional system. Heidi?
Didn't we have to have guilt as the sperm hit the egg? or our body wouldn't have been created if guilt is the beginning of the separation.
Yeah, I think that would be like an interpretation, what you just offered there about sperm and egg. I don't find that rendering within the Course in Miracles that it happened at conception. But please know, Heidi, that as we look into trying to understand this problem, this delusional system, all kinds of interpretations arise. And I would submit to you that it's not about finding any one singular metaphor or analogy, but to leave your mind open to something that is more profound, that has haunted the human race since the beginning of time, and therefore is not so simple as we would like it to be.
I'm confused. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's guilt that separated us, correct?
Guilt was the beginning of the separation. Yes.
So without guilt, we wouldn't have become a body, correct?
We would not be identified ourselves with the body, would be the more correct way. I would, the Holy Spirit could argue, Heidi, right now, you are not a body. You are a spirit of light. But without guilt, we would not be confused to think that we are a body.
Okay.
So hang on there. Let's
Okay.
read some more. You
Thank
have
you.
the answers often in the next paragraph or found later on.
If this were the real world, God would be cruel. For no father could subject his children to this as the price of salvation and be loving. Love does not kill to save. If it did, attack would be salvation. And this is the ego's interpretation, not God's. Only the world of guilt could demand this, for only the guilty could conceive of it. Adam's sin could have touched no one, had he not believed it was the Father who drove him out of paradise. For in that belief, the knowledge of the Father was lost, since only those who do not understand him could believe it. This world is a picture of the crucifixion of God's Son. And until you realize that God's Son cannot be crucified, this is the world you will see. Yet you will not realize this until you accept the eternal fact that God's Son is not guilty. He deserves only love because he has given only love. He cannot be condemned because he has never condemned. The atonement is the final lesson he need learn, for it teaches him that, never having sinned, he has no need of salvation.
Oh my, oh my, oh my. So we have two different stories here. And this is the technique that the Course uses to teach. On one side, there was some kind of problem, Heidi. Forget about what the specifics of it were. Some kind of problem arose, guilt, condemnation, attack, fear, everything sprang out of that. And the ego would teach that the entire world is guilty. It would form a whole thought system around this belief, including the accusation that God is really upset with us and that he frowns at the very, I'm using gentle language, frowns on creation because of all these problems. So that's one story there. The other story advocated by the Holy Spirit here is that none of that interpretation is true at all, and that it's entirely a delusional system, that it's founded upon the eternal fact that God's Son is not guilty, the exact opposite of what the ego teaches, and that creation deserves love because the creation has been given only love and cannot be condemned. And therefore, having never been condemned, has no need of salvation. Well, these are two entirely different storylines, if you want to call them. Narratives is the word I prefer, entirely different. And what you must realize is that having been born into this world, with growing up and being taught according to the teachings of the world, we learned about the world of guilt. You can find ample evidence of the world of guilt in your newspapers and your online media. It's the messages that reinforce the idea of a world of guilt are all around us. And without knowing it, because we were born into this world and as young children learn these things without really understanding or objecting to what we were being taught, that thought system we adopted as our own. And now we're learning that we will not be able to free ourselves until we accept the eternal truth that God's Son is innocent. Heidi?
Did God's Son have an ego?
No. We would say, Heidi, it's all a form of mistaken identification. It's thinking that you are something that you're not. So God's Son does not have an ego, but he's mistaken in believing he does. Just like, well, there are many examples of that, a form of mistaken identification. We have a long reading here, so Heidi, I know you'll have questions. That was the introduction to chapter 13. Now we're going to explore what the Course says, that we're going to explore a little bit more about how it came back, how it came about, how it affects us, and more particularly, how we can undo this delusional system.
Earlier, I said that the Holy Spirit shares the goal of all good teachers, whose ultimate aim is to make themselves unnecessary by teaching their pupils all they know. The Holy Spirit wants only this. For sharing the Father's love for his Son, he seeks to remove all guilt from his mind that he may remember his Father in peace. Peace and guilt are antithetical, and the Father can be remembered only in peace. Love and guilt cannot coexist, and to accept one is to deny the other. Guilt hides Christ from your sight, for it is the denial of the blamelessness of God's Son. In the strange world that you have made, the Son of God has sinned. How could you see him then? By making him invisible. The world of retribution rose in the black cloud of guilt that you accepted, and you hold it dear. For the blamelessness of Christ is the proof that the ego never was and can never be. Without guilt, the ego has no life, and God's Son is without guilt.
Okay, for those of you taking notes, or those of you that want the graduate program in Course of Miracles, take note. Without guilt, the ego has no life. We couldn't get to the root cause of the problem any easier than right there. And the truth is, of all of the light beings that we are without guilt. However, a set of ideas, of maddening ideas, have entered into our minds that act like a black cloud of guilt. And we've passively and sometimes actively acquiesced, accepted these ideas into our thought system, into our picture of the world. I'm in the habit of labeling it as the evil world theory. The theory that the world out there really is evil. And that thought is a part of this strange world that has been made. And while we talk about the problem, we always need to talk about the solution. The Holy Spirit seeks to remove all guilt from our mind, that we may remember our Father in peace. This is the only way. Everyone wants to experience peace and happiness. Guilt is an obstacle to inner peace. Peace and guilt are antithetical, and the Father can only be remembered in peace, not in guilt. Love and guilt cannot coexist. Therefore, we must undo this delusional system. And to undo a thought system that you've subscribed to for many, many decades of one's life, one needs to first identify the problem so that you are not asleep to the impact that it has on our thoughts and feelings. Susan?
I think part of what happens to us in the second paragraph when it says children are born into it through pain and in pain, and their growth is attended by suffering, and they learn of sorrow. And, I often think that if I were having children now, I would be raising them altogether differently with a different thought system. And I was domesticated by no fault of my parents or that generation, with people that don't even understand or are aware that they have an ego or two identities or can listen to two voices, like the duality of us. And so I think that's really that's really important for me to understand, like with Heidi's question. Well, I developed my false identity and my ego self through the way I was raised. So, and a few classes ago, it was brought up that the very last thing that Jesus got was he no longer listened or heard the ego. So there it is. The ego is there as long as we feed it. So just some thoughts.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I really like your idea, where you labeled it, Susie, as we were domesticated into a guilty world, and and we accepted this cloud of guilt into our mind and identified with it, came to think of ourselves as a part of a reality. It's a delusional, it's not a true reality, it's in a delusion. Came to think of ourselves as existing within that delusion. And therefore, it's very deeply ingrained into the subconscious mind, this belief about the world of guilt.
As you look upon yourself and judge what you do honestly, you may be tempted to wonder how you can be guiltless. Yet consider this: you are not guiltless in time, but in eternity. You have sinned in the past, but there is no past. Always has no direction. Time seems to go in one direction, but when you reach its end, it will roll up like a long carpet spread along the past behind you and will disappear. As long as you believe the Son of God is guilty, you will walk along this carpet, believing that it leads to death. And the journey will seem long and cruel and senseless, for so it is.
Mm-hmm. So it would be easy to not understand what they're talking about here, because it's a reference to a carpet of time that's going to roll up at the end of eternity and disappear. And what does all that mean? It's a metaphor. So here's an interpretation intended to be helpful: is our entire identity of the mistaken view of how we think of ourselves as a body living in time and space, that entire insistence that reality is what I see and feel and hear, that my body is the center of me, and that this place, physical world that I'm in, all that is my story, my reality. Well, believe it or not, the Course says, nay, nay, nay. That is but an interpretation of reality, but you can tell that those things are not reality because they keep changing. They are never the same. Even a span of 10 years is obvious how different things in that world of guilt of time and space are. And reality is a constant. It's stable. It's consistent. It changes not. And so part of the issue of our delusional system of living in a world of guilt is intimately bound up into our view that reality is the essence of creation. And we're here to tell you, nay, 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 reality is not based in time, it's based in eternity. And if you can, logically, you can understand those are might not believe it, but those are two different choices. That what the Course says is your innocence is in eternity. That's pretty easy to understand. In heaven, they have all of us are seen as perfectly innocent and lovable. It's only in time that the accusations about guilt and judgment and sin and attack and death, only in time were those issues raised. So, this is profound. This is really asking a lot, I think, because we're asking you to consider that the only way you will ever know your true self is to accept that you are a full-fledged participant in eternity, and that while you may be briefly visiting in time, this is not your home. Time is not time, and this planet, this world of guilt, is not your home. And yet, the mind often thinks that this world is its home, and believes that we suffer because of this evil, supposed evil world. Atisha?
That's why I love the saying, I'm a soul playing a role. It just sums it up so easily and so quickly, just so digestible for me. You know, like I'm here playing a role, and just as how as if I were in a play, I wouldn't think I'm that character. You know, I'm able to like come into it, play my role, and then come out. You know, so that just it just helps me to understand all of this.
Yeah, thank you, Atisha. I'm really a fan of that metaphor, if we call it that, as well, because all the world is but a stage, and we are its players that come and go on the stage. This is not the reality of God's creation. So, this is somewhat the beginnings of our deeper exploration of the differences between time and eternity. This is going to come up again and again. You do not have to get it all at once. It does not have to be something that you fully accept into your mind immediately, but I would suggest just don't close your mind to the idea. Just let it rest within your mind.
The journey the Son of God has set himself is useless indeed, but the journey on which his Father sets him is one of release and joy. The Father is not cruel, and his Son cannot hurt himself. The retaliation that he fears and that he sees will never touch him, for although he believes in it, the Holy Spirit knows it is not true. The Holy Spirit stands at the end of time, where you must be because he is with you. He has already undone everything unworthy of the Son of God, for such was his mission, given him by God, and what God gives has always been.
Yeah, so this statement is going to prove long-lasting in its effects. So for those of you who are students of the Course in Miracles, we're going to put a flag marker on this statement that the Holy Spirit stands, so stands as a metaphor. The Holy Spirit is at the end of time. Holy Spirit's being is not swirling about in the day-to-day calendars of our time, but is rather in a stationary position at the end of time, so to speak, between the end of time and the beginning of eternity, positioned right there on the edge of time and eternity. So that is pretty easy to accept, I think, that being a divine spirit, Holy Spirit is right there on the edge of eternity. What will take a little bit more time for you to accept is that you must be there also. For if the Holy Spirit is on the border of eternity, you would have to be separate if you were not there also. So what are we saying here is, let's switch the language to the language of the soul. Your soul exists on a plane of reality that's not visible to your human eyesight. It's a plane of eternity. It's the plane that the Holy Spirit operates on all the time. That is your true self. That is what you are forever. And you must be with the Holy Spirit. For the Holy Spirit is with you, is a part of you. In fact, your higher mind and the mind of the Holy Spirit really are the same mind. So, your soul is not found on this planet, on the nation, or in the body that you believe to be the ego's identity. Your soul is a part of a transcendent phenomena of creation that is apart from time. It has what we might call a brief visit into the depths of time, but this is by no means intended to be our home, nor is it our place of origin, nor is this where we end up. We're just visitors here. As Atisha alluded, we are souls playing a role in time on our way back to eternity. Atisha?
You will see me as you learn the Son of God is guiltless. He has always sought his guiltlessness, and he has found it. For everyone is seeking to escape from the prison he has made, and the way to find release is not denied him. Being in him, he has found it. When he finds it is only a matter of time, and time is but an illusion. For the Son of God is guiltless now, and the brightness of his purity shines untouched forever in God's mind. God's Son will always be as he was created. Deny your world and judge him not, for his eternal guiltlessness is in the mind of his Father and protects him forever.
So this program is going to help us to undo our investment in the world of guilt and simultaneously replace that investment with an investment in the real world, the world where we recover our sense of innocence. It's not that our innocence has ever been lost, it's just that it's been buried underneath this delusional system. Everyone is seeking to escape from that delusional system of believing in the evil world. No one wants to, no one can find happiness in a world full of evil and guilt and death and judgment and sin. And in fact, the innocence that is the remedy to that is already a part of your being. And so we will affirm in 1,000 different words and ways that God's Son will always be as he was created, innocent, guiltless now, and bright with the purity that is untouched forever in God's mind. Matter of fact, I find that one pretty easy to comprehend. if you can accept that you are a thought in God's mind, then it's natural to understand you are a pure and holy thought that shines in God's mind and not a guilty, dark, condemned, despicable thought. But what do we have to do in order to fully accept that truth? It's right here. Deny the world that you have made of guilt, deny your own private collection of perceptions about the evil world. Deny your world and judge not the children of God within it. That is our part. That is what the undoing of the ego is all about, is the saying no to this narrative about the world of guilt and withdrawing the belief that it is our right to judge how others are doing.
When you have accepted the atonement for yourself, you will realize there is no guilt in God's Son. And only as you look upon him as guiltless can you understand his oneness. For the idea of guilt brings a belief in condemnation of one by another, projecting separation in place of unity. You can condemn only yourself, and by so doing, you cannot know that you are God's Son. You have denied the condition of his being, which is his perfect blamelessness. Out of love he was created, and in love he abides. Goodness and mercy have always followed him, for he has always extended the love of his Father.
So it seems to me that it all comes down to this paragraph. This is really the crux. The rest is helpful too on getting you to this place. We said earlier that peace and guilt are antithetical and that you cannot know the Father in a state of guilt. And here it says that you can only understand oneness after you have looked upon creation as guiltless. You can't bring your guilty world theory into your own experience of peace and happiness. They are antithetical. Why? Now, this gets very psychological. Why? Because guilt is a judgment that someone is wrong or unworthy, and it's a belief in your prerogative to condemn others. And by condemning others, what you're really doing is identifying with the act of condemnation. You are condemning yourself. And by so doing, you cannot understand the true nature of God's children. It cuts you, it's an obstacle that cuts you off from a recognition of their true being. It's a denial of the condition of the being of God's children. And so we wind up doing this to ourselves. This is sometimes referred to in Course in Miracles in very dramatic terms, such as crucifying oneself. By thinking that you're condemning the world or others you're actually condemning yourself. And in so doing, you're denying the very nature of your own being, all of which obviously reinforces the notion of separation. How do we get around this, Atisha?
As you perceive the holy companions who travel with you, you will realize that there is no journey, but only an awakening. The Son of God, who sleepeth not, has kept faith with his Father for you. There is no road to travel on, and no time to travel through. For God waits not for his Son in time, being forever unwilling to be without him. And so it has always been. Let the holiness of God's Son shine away the cloud of guilt that darkens your mind, and by accepting his purity as yours, learn of him that it is yours.
Mm-hmm. So we have a distinction that our graduate students are going to want to recognize and appreciate. It's in two different phases. In the beginning phase, it appears as though our soul is on a journey back home. And we will refer again and again in Course of Miracles about this journey to awakening, this return to love, the steps by steps that one takes along the journey. Okay, it's a metaphor. But as you progress and start to unload the baggage of the ego, to undo that world of guilt and your identification with it, more and more you will come to recognize the true nature of your being and the true nature of your brothers. And as you do that, you perceive your holy companions who travel with you. You will see, recognize the light is in all of us equally. And then you'll realize that there is no journey, that there's no place to go. We're not trying to get elsewhere. We're not trying to leave here to get there. It's an inward journey to awaken to a truth that has always been our truth, that has always been our being and identity. So there is no road to travel on. There is no time to travel through. All that really matters is that we return to the recognition of how we were created. In fact, God is not waiting for us to get over this experience of time. God has not put us on hold until we're done with the time, preoccupation with time. The truth is that we are already in his mind. We are already in his embrace, in his love, in his acceptance. We may be asleep to it, but our being is already surrounded and enfolded by his presence.
You are invulnerable because you are guiltless. You can hold on to the past only through guilt, for guilt establishes that you will be punished for what you have done, and thus depends on one-dimensional time, proceeding from past to future. No one who believes this can understand what always means, and therefore guilt must deprive you of the appreciation of eternity. You are immortal because you are eternal, and always must be now. Guilt, then, is a way of holding past and future in your mind to ensure the ego's continuity. For if what has been will be punished, the ego's continuity is guaranteed. Yet the guarantee of your continuity is God's, not the ego's. And immortality is the opposite of time, for time passes away, while immortality is constant.
Mhm. This paragraph is a perfect lesson for those of you who have long struggled with the time eternity paradox and try to make some meaning of that, try to make some sense of it. So let's just establish a few facts or givens of that understanding. One is guilt is an obstacle that deprives you of appreciating eternity. Or in other words, you can't fully accept the truth that my being is eternal while at the same time believing in the guilt of yourself and others. It's an obstacle. So if we remove, but we're looking to remove that obstacle of guilt, which will then free us to see with clarity, to understand the nature of the truth that's always been true, which has to do with our eternal nature. It has to do with always. And the key words that I will use again and again, is being forever, always in eternity. Being forever, always in eternity. It refers to a state that is transcendent from the passages of time and this shadow, dark world of guilt, et cetera, et cetera. It exists on the plane of creation. So guilt, let's go back to guilt, because that's what we're struggling to free ourselves with. Guilt is a way of holding the past and future in your mind to ensure that your mind is wedded to the belief in time and guilt and death. It's an upside down, viewed from eternity, it's an upside down belief system. Which guilt, again, what are we talking about? Guilt holds past and future in your mind and establishes that the ego stories that you remember from 20 years ago, it tries to establish continuity so that you'll still identify with those stories of the past. And by saying 20 years ago, what I really mean is whatever it is in your past that you have some regrets on, maybe you were hurt, maybe it was a turning point in your life, maybe it was you hurt somebody else and set them back. But whatever that narrative is, that story, guilt then attempts to keep that alive, and so that the ego can attempt a sense of continuity. True continuity is with God.
Accepting the atonement teaches you what immortality is. For by accepting your guiltlessness, you learn that the past has never been, and so the future is needless and will not be. The future in time is always associated with expiation, and only guilt could induce a sense of a need for expiation. Accepting the guiltlessness of the Son of God as yours is therefore God's way of reminding you of his Son and what he is in truth. For God has never condemned his Son, and being guiltless, he is eternal.
So this is a lot to ask. This notion of not being identified with time, but with eternity. And know that all this is in your curriculum. For in other words, we're in this curriculum of A Course in Miracles. We're not finished it. We're taking it, but it's all a part of the curriculum. And when you're ready, you'll work it. You'll accept the atonement. And when that happens, then your understanding of immortality will become clarified because you'll come to see the events of time, call it the narrative of time, or the things that occurred on the stage of time, as being needless. And the fear of future events that may not go well, all that investment of your power into fretting about a future will be seen as unnecessary and needless. And it's really freeing of the prison of guilt. It allows then one to be fully present to what is right now. And that is extremely empowering. But we don't have to accomplish all that today. Let's just think of this as being where we're reviewing the lesson that we will have to learn. And so it does involve a redefinition of past and future so that they take on, and remember, we said past and future are the ego's way of establishing its continuity. Well, when you accept the atonement for yourself, you let go of the ego's continuity, and with it go the investment, the preoccupation with guilt of the past and fear of the future. They become less and less, they become needless. And then you find your power existing in the present.
You cannot dispel guilt by making it real and then atoning for it. This is the ego's plan, which it offers instead of dispelling it. The ego believes in atonement through attack, being fully committed to the insane notion that attack is salvation. And you who cherish guilt must also believe it. For how else but by identifying with the ego could you hold dear what you do not want? The ego teaches you to attack yourself because you are guilty. And this must increase the guilt, for guilt is the result of attack. In the ego's teaching, then, there is no escape from guilt, for attack makes guilt real. And if it is real, there is no way to overcome it. The Holy Spirit dispels it simply through the calm recognition that it has never been. As he looks upon the guiltless Son of God, he knows that this is true. And being true for you, you cannot attack yourself, for without guilt, attack is impossible. You then are saved because God's Son is guiltless, and being wholly pure, you are invulnerable.
Mm-hmm. So this becomes what Atisha just read, becomes a launching point for our subsequent readings. So we're teasing up an idea now to which we'll be exploring more subsequently. But it has to do with a pattern that everybody has experienced. And that is of having some kind of event occurred to you that went all wrong, and then playing it back, replay it subsequently, either days later or sometimes decades later, playing that event back in your mind, reliving it, doing exactly what the ego wants you to do, is keeping it alive, keep giving faith and power to it. That experience of making it real to your mind, and then being a good Course in Miracles student, you realize how miserable that makes you feel, and you'll seek to then let it go. But what was done is that you amplify the experience by replaying it again and again in your mind. And you cannot dispel guilt by making it real and then atoning for it. So this is going to become a major lesson, because we need to stop doing this. And we need to train our mind to stop doing this. And we need to understand that the tools are there. The method, if you will, that the Holy Spirit offers here is available to us, but we have to learn it and then practice it. So, meanwhile, if you want to keep the continuity of the ego going, just continue replaying the attack in your mind. Just continue feeling the guilt. And for attack makes guilt real. Oh, by the way, the ego has one objective in replaying the events of the past. Very clear in A Course in Miracles. The one reason the ego wants you to replay the past is to identify the guilty, to identify the guilty parties. And so I know I've done this, maybe for hours on the same thing, to try to figure out what happened. What happened? How did it go wrong? And little did I realize that I was caught in a loop which reinforces the ego's continuity. So we have to discontinue that pattern. We cannot move into the realms of inner peace and acceptance of the atonement while we're invested in a habit of the mind that reinforces ego continuity. So, to be continued. We will get to that. Susie?
I know we're running over. Just really quickly, I had a couple events in my life and I would attack my mind. I did attack my mind for decades because I thought it was real, 100%. And then after I started taking the course and I realized that everything I thought I knew was not real and they were all just stories, my go-to thing was, okay, Holy Spirit, now I understand. I believe that this was Susie's story, Susie's world. Please help heal my mind. And honest to God, that is all I did, well, still do, every night before I went to sleep, every morning. Please help, because what does it say? A miracle is a shift in my thinking, a shift in my perception. And so many of the things that I thought were real are gone. Not that I don't remember them. Not that if you asked me about it now, I couldn't have a conversation about it, but the intensity and, oh my goodness. But all I need to do is let the Holy Spirit know I'm open and willing for healing. She does the rest. So, I just wanted to share that because, when I came in here, pretty crazy. But Susie was crazy, not my higher mind, So anyway, that's just always my prayer. I think there's a line in the Course that says there's one prayer, Lord, heal my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Susie. Thank you for sharing that. We are through with time. Who needs that time? Our time for being together is now coming to a close. There was a lot of ground we covered here, including a shift from time to eternity, from guilt to guiltlessness. A good student does review their notes, review the lessons. So I want to thank you all for being here, for being good students. Thank you, Atisha, for reading. Thank you all for your attention. We look forward to getting again real soon. Namaste.
Thank you, Atisha. Thank you, everyone.
Donica, there's class tomorrow night, right?
Yes, there is.
I won't be here, you guys. I'm going to see Lady Gaga, but I'll watch the video.
Oh, Lady Gaga is going to be on here, the Zoom.
Oh, really? I'm going to Miami.
I heard.
Yeah. Maybe I'll bring her.
She signed up for the emails.
Yeah.
There we go. That's right.
Thanks, Atisha.
Thanks,
God
Tisha.
bless.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks,
Peace and love.
Susie.
Bye.
Good night.
Love you guys.